Riveting 101. You are going to learn how to do two types of riveting in this video. A wire rivet and a tube rivet. See the difference? Okay. So the first thing you got to do is prep your rivet, and you need to know what size hole to drill so that you know what kind of wire or tube you're going to use. Okay. So everybody has already been trained and has passed the drilling test, okay? So now you have to really pay attention to what size drill bit you're going to use, okay? So what I have here are some different holes drilled already because you already know how to drill. And the way that we figure out what drill size we want to do is we have to figure out what rivet wire we want to use. So in here, let me know if it gets low. There's different types of rivet wire. They have different thicknesses. We call that gauge in metalsmithing, different gauges. Anybody have their ears gauged? Bigger ear holes? That's another place where you hear it? Okay, I guess that's kind of 90s. And then different colors. So there's brass, bronze, and copper. So it really depends on what you want. You must always, in every instance, find the wire that you want to use, or if you're using tube, this is the tubing. I'll get to this later, but the tubing's in here. And I really only have one size for tubing to make it a little easier. And then they're just like kind of cut shorter. But just know all of these rivet wires and tube wires, you have to cut to make it the size that you need. So you cut what you need and then you put it back in here for others to use, okay? So you need to figure out what you're gonna do. For the first one, I'm gonna show you how to figure out what wire rivet you wanna do. And for this purpose, I'm gonna be using this size wire. So I know that I wanna use this, so I need to figure out what size this is. I don't know if any of you have been wondering what this nifty tool is. This is a BNS gauge, and it tells you what size gauge you're working with, whether it be sheet or wire. And the way that this works is there's whole numbers on this side, and then there's a lot of decimals which make your brain go crazy. Don't worry about that side. We're only working with the size that has whole numbers. And when we work with this tool, you use the slots. It's kind of confusing because there's holes and it seems like you should use the holes, but you use the slots on this tool. And what you do is you'll start where it's thinner and you'll move your metal down until it falls into the slot. And that is 14 gauge. It's a 14 gauge wire, okay? Gauges work by the higher the number, the thinner the wire or the metal. So if we have a 22 gauge, that's a really thin wire. Raise your hand if you have your ears pierced. Okay, that standard wire size is 19 gauge. Okay, so 19 gauge is thinner than this, right? This is 14 gauge. So lower the number, bigger and thicker the wire, okay? All right, so I got my 14 gauge wire, boom, and then I need to figure out a 14 gauge drill bit. So I'm gonna slide up in here. If this stays organized, our thinner drill bit should be at the top. And I'm gonna pull one out. I've already pulled it out. I already know which one it is. And when I find it, I use the stock of the drill bit rather than the twisted part. The twist part's gonna be inaccurate. Okay, so I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna go like this, and I'm gonna make sure it slides into 14, which it is. So this is 14 gauge. Now, if for some reason I didn't have the right size drill bit for that, there's one exception you can make. You can use one drill bit larger. So if I have a 14 gauge wire and I can't find a 14 gauge drill bit, first ask me, because I have more in the back usually. I only bring out a few at a time so that they don't go bad, they don't get lost. If I'm like, whoa, I'm out of those, or I never have those, you know, you can use one gauge bigger, and that would be 13 gauge, because that's a bigger drill bit, right? Okay, so everybody got that so far? This is super important, okay? Now, all of you that needed to drill your holes can now drill your holes once you figure that out. Okay, so I'm gonna put this down. Now I have my drill bit, and I got my wire. Is everybody with me so far? Okay, good job at listening, thank you. So I'm gonna take this out. If you forget how to do this, here's your opportunity. Chuck key. Slide in the hole, twist to the left, and align the gears. This will loosen, maybe. Oh, Is this one stripped? This one's stripped, sorry. Oh, someone put this in. Someone got this stuck in here. It's okay, sometimes things happen. Someone put this in like really crooked, and so you gotta pull it out sometimes with a pair of pliers. That happens. Good thing I was next in line. It's all good. So now I'm gonna push this up, and I'm gonna let the fingers come down and tighten it. Getting it straight is hard, so you don't wanna put it too far up. That's what makes it get stuck. Okay. Okay. So let's make sure that's straight by turning it on and spinning it, right? My next step would be to make sure it comes down to the wood. So I'm getting all set up with my drill press. This is all review. Now, I already have a hole drilled here, but I'm just gonna remind you how to drill. So I'm gonna make a mark. I'm gonna put this stuff back so we don't spill it everywhere. So when you're done using the tools, put everything back. And I'm gonna make a mark. Now, you'll see that I have this taped together. This is a way that you could drill through 2 pieces of metal at once. I tape my pieces together because if you have multiple rivets that need to be in line with one another, you have to drill them so that they don't move. So taping them together is a really handy way to make sure that they are aligned, okay? You can drill through multiple pieces of metal. It doesn't have to be just 2. I would say going through more than 3, come get me and make sure we have it set up safely, okay? But you can rivet through more than 2 pieces of metal. You can rivet through 3, 4, you can rivet through as many as you want, okay? Most of us won't be going beyond 4, I don't think, ever, but you know, who knows? All right, so I'm gonna make a mark, boop, this type of hammer, and then I'm gonna put this back, boop, 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 and then I'm gonna drill my hole. Do I have my glasses on my head still? No, okay. So I'm gonna line it up, make sure it's lined up, lift it up, turn it on. Now when I go through 2, I'm gonna go down, lift up, and then go down. I'm gonna let the drill bit breathe for a while. Brand new drill bit, you should not be pushing really hard. It shouldn't be that hard. If it's like that, that means we need to get a new one. We need to throw that one away because it's dull, okay? Now, that's my 14. I'm just gonna leave that in there for a minute. And now I have my hole that should be drilled to the right size. And now I have to take my metal and I have to cut it to the correct size. This is probably the biggest pain in the butt about riveting, and this is why people don't wanna do it. But riveting's my favorite. I love riveting. Ask anybody that's in metals too. They're always gonna say, Miss A is always gonna tell you to rivet. It's cleaner, you don't have to clean up the solder, okay? So, you need to have one side filed flat. So I filed it straight. Now I just gotta knock off the burr, so I just kinda go like that, just so there's not, you know, I'm talking about those little spiky things that are on the edge. That will stop it from being able to go through the hole. I'm gonna make sure that I got the right wire, okay? First of all, look at that. Fits perfectly, okay? That's what you want. If it's too loose, it's not gonna work, okay? So now I have this. Now how do I measure this? It's super high tech. You want to have enough area on each side so that you can, when you hammer it, it flares out like a mushroom. So I say it's about the thickness of a piece of metal on each side. It's like a little button. And the way that I do this is I just use my thumbnail, which isn't very long. I make a mark like that. So I have my thumb right here. That's where I'm gonna cut this. So I'm gonna take a file and I'm gonna make a mark just by filing across. And then I got just this little tiny mark so that I know where I can go. Now from there, I can either saw this, which is what I do. I take this little thing and I saw it, boop, 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 boop. Most of you are gonna be like, no. You can also snip it. The only thing that happens when you snip it with pliers is that you get a point. So I'm gonna cut it like on pliers, just like, cause I think that's what most of us are gonna do. I cut it a little bit below the line. Hold both the spots so that it doesn't fly at you. And then I have this piece. These are tiny pieces of metal, you guys. So I have 2 tools that will help you. You can use pliers, but I think actually the thing that works better is the, there should always be 2 of these here, I'm not really sure. And by the way, a lot of this work you should do at your table, right? At your desk. I'm doing this here so that you all can see and I'm not making you all move around a lot. But all of this prep work of making the rivets the right size, don't hog up this station because people need to use the drill. Have this section, you're doing this part at your desk, okay? So I'm gonna put this in, and what this works as like a wedge system. So this little tiny thing's in here, little tiny piece of wire, okay? And then I'm gonna file it. It doesn't take much, but if you don't file it, it's not gonna work, okay? Because you need material. The essence of a rivet working is that you have a material that's going through and it has to spread around the hole so that it gets trapped, okay? So if you're a little bit confused on how long a rivet should be, these riveting steps up here tell you exactly what you need to do, okay? That's the length, the hammer gently right there at the bottom. That's kind of a diagram, okay? So this is the length. And what you do is you just double check it. I hold it with a pair of pliers because it's easier to hold. And I slide it through and I make sure that it has a little bit of a button on each side. You kind of got to squint, maybe wink at it so you can see it, okay? Stop it now.